So we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to my Connect Lounge talk. This is about the citizen industrial data developer building smarter, faster with Copilot and libraries. So my plan for the talk today, I'm going to give a little bit of an intro, kind of going through that right now. I'm going to go through what the goal of this talk is. I'm going to give you a Connect overview, which you probably already have if you're here in the Connect Lounge, but we'll talk about that real fast. And then I'm going to talk about how we're enabling the modern developer. So, just a little bit about me. I'm a senior manager for the Product Readiness Guild. I'm inside of AVEVA R&D. I've been with AVEVA, previously OSI Soft, for about 15 years, going all the way from tech support, field service, to being a software developer, senior software developer on our products. Also, then doing a lot of near-term research inside of R&D. Email address is there if you do want to reach out. So, my goal for the talk today is basically really simple. Hopefully, I can hit this goal right here today, which is basically show how easy the modern Connect is for everybody to programmatically interact with. So if you're here in the Connect Lounge, you probably know Connect. You've probably seen this slide a handful of times, if not way too many times over the last day and a half, day and a half or so. But basically, Connect is the industrial intelligence platform. It's purpose-built for industry. It lets you aggregate and contextualize and securely share data across sites and data types with less friction. There are 5 core capabilities. There's the connectivity, data management, visualization, collaboration, AI and analytics, and applications, all on one industrial platform. I have this slide up here next because what I'm going to be talking about and showing a lot here today is some of the new features that are coming from Connect. So here in about an hour and a half or so, there is the Connect roadmap. You can find out more about some of these features there at that Connect roadmap. You can find out things like when is it going to be available and things like that. So yeah, I definitely encourage you to go to that. But now that we're through our introduction, I want to talk about some of the things we are doing in the modern Connect to help you as a developer accomplish whatever you need to accomplish. So these are some of the developer tools that are available. So AVEVA publicly provides things like documentation, samples, and toolkits. So we've got a bunch of different QR codes here. If you wanted to look at those, we have the developer documentation. So this is going to be like your APIs. These are going to have your URIs that you're going to need, as well as your objects that you have with it. These are pretty complete, and they've got a lot of great information that will help you understand how to interact with it. One of the things that's new for Connect is this OpenAPI spec. So I'm going to be talking about this in more detail. The other thing in here I like to point out is if you go to github.com/AVEVA, there's a bunch of samples that are up there, open source, Apache 2.0 license samples that you can take and start to build your applications from. So some of the things inside of AVEVA Connect that you can use as your developer, as part of your developer experience, there's things like the API console, the GraphQL console, and the OMF editor. I'm going to go through the first two in a little bit more detail, but I'll just mention about the OMF editor. So this exists as a nice little portal experience where you can build and validate your OMF messages to send data to Connect. So if you don't know much about OMF, there was just a class that just finished a little bit ago, so I can't tell you to go that. I don't know if we have any more talks about OMF, but it's a way you can send data into Connect. So if you have questions about that, please just reach out. I can tell you all about OMF. So inside of Connect, there's a couple of things that are built to help you with your development efforts. So one of these is the API console. So this is a graphical interface to basically expose what the Connect REST API is. Everything you see in the Connect portal is basically calling into our public REST API that we have. And the API console allows you to interact with it. It allows you to interact against your own data inside your own account. It's important to remember this when you're making changes. I've accidentally deleted a lot of different things, and if you do a put, it's going to update your object that you're modifying. If you're going to do a post, same thing, you're going to create something. If you do a delete, it's going to do that. So make sure you understand what you're doing rather than just testing it around there. The API console does support, basic things like autocomplete. It's also got a REST body in there, we can see, and it's got some other quality of life things such as like history, and it's got the ability to let you see the response headers and everything that's coming back. Other thing that's very helpful when you're developing, especially if you are doing things against GraphQL here, is the GraphQL console. So GraphQL is something that's typically new for a lot of people. This is kind of a new emerging technology over the last few years. So this helps you create your GraphQL queries. It's very similar to the API console. Basically, in this case, you get to click through to figure out what data you want to add to your request, and then it creates the query for you, and then you see your response window. So those are some of the things inside of Connect that are there for you. So this is one of the things that's provided for you with your kind of adjacent to Connect. So it's a different web page here, but this is going to be your OpenAPI specifications. So Connect exposes all of its functionalities through a set of discrete API services. The APIs are fully described and available via OpenAPI definitions. For those who don't know, OpenAPI is a standard language agnostic interface for both humans and computers to fully understand service capabilities. Basically, it's a JSON that specifies what the URIs look like, what the response bodies look like, what the different classes and the models that are returned are. You can access all your Connect services OpenAPI definitions from a single link, and then from here, from this page, once you go to the top right, you can select which service you're looking at. You can download your JSON of what the OpenAPI spec is. It's then got, basically all the different routes available, and then all of the actual object model responses that you'd get. What you see there in the screenshot is just a rendering from the OpenAPI spec. This is an auto-generated web page that just kind of makes it a little bit more human readable. So with that OpenAPI spec, one of the very powerful things, and the reason why you use OpenAPI, is you can generate an SDK from an OpenAPI spec very simply. So here at AVEVA, we kind of recommend a recommended approach is to use Microsoft Kyoto. So this is an official Microsoft tool for SDK generation from OpenAPI specifications. Obviously, since it comes from Microsoft, it's going to have strong .NET C# support. It also works really well with things like Python, Go, TypeScript. I've used these in multiple different languages. So if you're going to generate your own SDK for this, basically, step one is install Kyoto, download it. It's, get it from Microsoft's website. Then you need to download that JSON for the OpenAPI spec for the services you're going to interact with, and then you use Kyoto to generate the SDKs, and then you just include it in there. So it's pretty straightforward, simple process, and then now you've got a nice SDK to use. I do like to always point out that you can use other OpenAPI spec generation tools here. So I've used OpenAPI generator, and I've used Swagger CodeGen as well. Going a step further, you can use AI to generate your SDKs and code too. So you don't have to, use something like Kyoto to create your SDK library of interacting with Connect. You can just ask your favorite AI code generation tool to go to the OpenAPI spec, and it will understand how to interact with it. I mean, it's a standard format, so it knows how to do it. It's done this lots and lots of times. So if you do this, I'd just like to point out that you must specify the token endpoint, because that's not specified inside the OpenAPI spec that we have. You also need to specify some things like the token scope for properly authenticating as our OAuth 2 endpoint. So what I'm going to show now is basically using AI to generate my code that I want to show for just how simple it is to interact with Connect. So I have my prompt up here. So this is the prompt I'm going to insert. So I'm going to show a quick about 4-minute video of code generation here. So this is my demo prompt. Step one, basically I'm just telling it, going to go ahead and tell Copilot inside of Visual Studio Code, please use the OpenAPI spec located at it, and I give it just the URL link to this JSON file. I'm asking it to generate a client library to interact with Connect, and then I'm telling it that I've got a local file. This is just an app settings.json file. It's got things like a client ID and secret. It's got things like my URL, other parameters that it's going to need to connect to Connect. Once I've generated the client, I'm not going to go ahead and ask it to use Streamlit. So it's going to infer that I'm going to ask for it to write this whole thing in Python. Streamlit's just a simple front-end application that allows for quick dashboarding, make a cool little web page very simply. So it's going to use Streamlit to get all the streams based off of an answerable query, and then display a table of all the streams, and then finally add a drop-down and allow you to choose a stream, and then display the last value of the stream. So pretty simple things that you might want to accomplish, but this is kind of just showing that the OpenAPI spec can figure out how to interact with all of Connect, get in the data, and actually show it and visualize it. So here's my video. This is my unedited video of watching me code here against Connect. So you're going to see I go ahead and put in my my chat prompt here. Copilot's going to go ahead and start looking at it here. It's going to, start looking at my app settings.json file to kind of understand what did I provide to it, what am I giving to it. It's also then going to start to interrogate the OpenAPI endpoint to get that JSON file to understand what the services are available. Basically, what does the API specifications look like? How do I interact with Connect? So it's going to take it a few minutes to kind of download this file, investigate it, figure out what it needs to do. So that's what it's doing right now. So I think it still says connecting there. Yeah. So like I said, this is my unedited video, so it takes a little bit long. We're going to go another little bit here, and we'll see, Copilot's going to start to get a little bit chatty, right? If you've ever used AI to code, it starts to get a little bit chatty, and it likes to put up lots of different things about what it's doing and what it's accomplishing. So we'll start to walk through that in a second. We can start to see it's starting to understand the endpoint. It's starting to explain to me, hey, I understand this, how I interact with streams. This is how I get data. This is what your files look like. So at this point, it's going to start to create our SDS client library. So this is going to be the library that, it's generated from that SDK, from the OpenAPI spec, and how we would, be able to leverage this and use this to interact with Connect. All right, so right there, we see the SDS client.python file gets created, so it's going to use that. So now it's going to build that Streamlit application that's going to use our client file on the back end. So now it's got the interactions to connect, it's got authentication put into there, it's got how to get streams, how to get values, how to pass in a query, everything like that we asked our application to do. It's then going to, like I say, it builds that Streamlit application over top of it. All right, so now we see our Streamlit underscore .py app. So now it's going to go through and it's going to do some different testing. So again, I'm walking through this and, oh, nice. Is that some, I'll pause my video. Okay, there we go. I can start my video back up. All right. All right, so now we have our AI in the background. It's going to want to compile it. It's going to basically check to make sure it has valid code. It's checking to make sure I've got all my requirements installed, all my libraries, because again, this is a fresh applications. It's making sure I have requests, Streamlit, everything like that I might need here in my little Python application to just get this to work. So it's going to go through, check all of that. So it all looks good. It all says it's compiling. We can see that output from Copilot, and it's all very happy with itself. So I go ahead and I hit run, and I have a little bit of an error. Basically, I created a launch.json in here. I have a name for my Python file. It created a different name for the Python file than I was expecting with my launch.json, so I'm going to go ahead and modify my launch.json because, like I said, it just created something slightly different than what I expected here, and that's fine. So go ahead and do that again, save my launch.json here, and then now I can go ahead and jump into my debugger. It's going to create pull up my Streamlit app, so I'm going to bring that over from my other monitor, and here we go. I've got a brand new page here I've never seen before. I have a search bar there at the front. If I don't add anything to my search, it's going to bring in all my streams. I click and I select my stream that I want, and I click get last value, and it's able to bring my last value in from it. So there, in the span of about 4 minutes, I went from not having anything in my system here, not having any bit of code, to now I'm able to bring in stream data, and start to interact with Connect all by just my short little prompt there to Copilot. So with that, that's kind of the highlight of my talk right there. It's just my little video. So I want to kind of just bring this back to kind of, what's the power of this? So basically what I'm showing is you can interact with all of Connect very quickly and easily with that OpenAPI spec, with our modern design of our APIs. AI understands what it is, and if you're trying to build a report, you're trying to build visualizations, you're trying to do something custom against Connect, AI will understand how to do it and will be able to allow you to do it very quickly and easily. With that, there's some other sessions that are going on. Some of my times here are wrong, so don't look too closely at those, but I'm giving another talk here in a little bit. Suggest you coming back. This one's going to be about entities, and I also highly recommend that roadmap talk that's going to be going on in about an hour on the main stage there. And then I did talk about a lot of new Connect functionality. So if you are interested in, basically journeying early access to be able to see some of these new technologies like the Open API spec and some of the things behind the scenes there, scan this or reach out.